Minutes past 8 as we continue this morning, or we kick off this morning with our broadcast on this day of Jum'ah. And as we have been doing since the 7th of October, basically almost every program we're hosting has got to do with what is happening out in Gaza. Now, this morning we are talking with uh, Ibrahim Thembisa Fakude, CEO of Mail and Guardian, and also senior researcher at AFRASID. We're talking about Dr. Naledi Pandor, and this is a speech that he had given with regards to what is playing out between Israel and the people of Palestine. And we're also going to do some analysis on the speech that he had given. Ibrahim, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
Yes, obviously, we're seeing so much playing out on an international level with regards to what is playing out, and right across the entire world, the United Nations is no different. And also, yeah, in South Africa, we've seen a government, we've seen the NEC express their solidarity with the people of Palestine, and in the spotlight, obviously, right in the center of this, and rightly so, would be our international relations minister, Naledi Pandor. Now, we've heard about her expressing condolences to the people of Palestine and Israel for lives lost, but also at the same time calling out both Israel and Hamas for alleged violations of international law, and obviously calling for a ceasefire. Just what do you make of South Africa's position at this point in time, particularly with the international relations minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor?
Well, I think there are various things at the moment, and all of us, notwithstanding what's happening in Palestine, and we all are on the side of the Palestinians, but I think there are other opportunities that we must not be blind from looking. First is South Africa, notwithstanding its support for Palestine, must maintain its position in the table when the negotiations resume, because the Palestinian issue is a huge issue, and as a country, you want to have your seat in that table. So you have to be careful and circumspect in terms of ensuring that you maintain that seat. For example, Sarah Maposa and Naledi Pandor, at whatever level when the negotiations do come in, because at some point there is going to be negotiation after this destruction, which has been brutal and barbaric by the Israelis. At some point, people are supposed to sit. And I would like to see South Africa as the biggest support of the Palestinian struggle and solidarity movement being part of that discussion. Currently, we know that countries such as Egypt, Jordan, United States, Qatar are certainly in that seat. But what are we doing to ensure that we are going to be in that seat? So that's a very important balancing act, that while we condemn, criticize, and do whatever we have to do, we need to be essential enough, or to be seen at least to be an essential part of negotiations between Israel and Palestine. So that balancing act is key, and I think sometimes we forget that part, that our strongest part in terms of international relations has been, from the time of Mandela, a country that brings peace, a country that can reconcile all the warring factions. So I think that's key. How we do that, I'm not a politician, they're able to find ways of doing it, but I'm saying that we need to insist in it is that we do, that we maintain that position in that seat of negotiation. So after all the solidarity, rhetoric, and whatever it is that we say and do on behalf of the Palestinians, we must be part of that negotiation. That's the first point. The other point which I think is very important is we also need to remember that we are journalists, and journalism has to survive post this barbaric act by the Israelis. So whilst it's important for us, and it's I can't report on Palestine because I just cannot. I'm too pro-Palestinian for me to be a reporter in this regard. But at the same time, we need to maintain the basic principles of journalism in how we cover the story. I know many journalists have been pushed to the corner, particularly in Palestine, where the Palestinians and the Gazans are the only ones reporting their story. So they can't be, there's no way that they can be balanced in this regard. It's like expecting someone who lives in apartheid Soweto to be balanced on apartheid. It can't happen. But on the other side, you've got the journalists who are in Israel, who are embedded and seeing the story through the lenses of the Israeli Defense Force, who also can't be objective. But as the custodian of this very important fraternity and pillar of our democracy, we need to all the time insist on truthfulness, on objectivity, and all the beautiful principles that make what journalism is all about. Because we can't be throwing all of it out the window simply because all of us are impacted by this. I mean, I know Wael, the guy, the journalist whose family was wiped out in Gaza the day before yesterday. Notwithstanding, I mean, he continues to try and be a good journalist. Notwithstanding that he's been affected, targeted by the Israeli Defense Force, he continues to report as best as he knows how to do for Al Jazeera Arabic. So we're in a very, very sensitive part of our history as politicians, but also as journalists in terms of thinking about the day after of this conflict. And right now, very few of us are. And we mustn't compromise what we have built on over the years in terms of the pillars, particularly that of, on how we go about telling stories and all of that. And if people do feel that, this is too much for them, I think they have to exclude themselves, particularly as journalists.
Yes, Ibrahim, I'm glad you brought this whole journalist angle into this discussion that we are having. Now, looking at the Minister of International Relations, she slammed, obviously, the United Nations, the Security Council, for its inadequacy and also in terms of application of international law, where she spoke about it being uniformly applied for it to be credible. And the whole question surrounding journalism as well, because this is actually linked to this discussion in terms of the credibility and also in terms of the dilemma. Now, what you're saying is, you need to remain objective as a journalist, which is fine. Those are the principles of journalism. But also at the end of the day, when one looks at what has been playing out, the media narrative, particularly the mainstream, the big media corporates right across the entire world, and there have been many claims, many have been debunked, many have been retracted as well. And the example that I would give of those two women that were released, where the women said one thing, CNN reported this thing very, very differently. And again, what the world media is calling for is outright condemnation of Hamas. So this is a one-sided condemnation where we've seen the minister obviously slamming both Hamas and Israel for the loss of innocent lives. Now, where does all of this actually fit into the discussion, and particularly from a reporting perspective as well?
Well, I have a different view, and my view might be a bit controversial, but I think there is no other way you can have this story favoring Israel. This is just impossible, because pictures speak for themselves. So there is not much we should or can do as journalists, particularly those of us who are pro-Palestinian, in this regard, because you can't do anything. I mean, I hear what the former Prime Minister of Israel, Yair Lapid, said yesterday, that when you report and be objective, you're still favoring Hamas. When you report and not, either way, the only way you can do is to get the cameras, be in the van of the IDF and travel with them. That you can say, okay, that's pro-Israeli. But there is no institution on earth at the moment in terms of journalism, except maybe for print and those that don't have pictures, that can say that, this story can in any way favor Israel. Because pictures just will never be manipulated. So the narrative at the moment, well, let me say the narrative, let me just say the pictures are in favor of Palestine, because we're seeing what's happening. Everyone sees what's happening. There's no other way. It speaks to your humanity. This kind of barbaric and barbarism that you see happening in Gaza speaks to humanity. So in that regard, I think the media has got no choice, even if they want to manipulate the story. It will be in favor of the Palestinians. However, in terms of narratives, which is not as much, because every narrative now, with the advent of social media, is supported by pictures, it becomes very difficult for them to manipulate. But there are small, little, tiny things. Some of us, you and I, who are sophisticated and understand the nuances of wording in journalism, that the Western media, of course, continues to use. For example, they say this is going to be war in Israel, attack on Hamas, instead of, war on Gaza, because it's not really attack on Hamas, it's war. So all of those kind of things, of course, have got the impact on how the viewer read the story. But I think we have been successful in terms of, telling the story of the Palestinians. We don't see pictures coming from Israel, and because that picture has to come from there, except for the events of 7th October, which, by the way, the large part of the coverage and footage is with Hamas. So as we go along, what we're seeing and experiencing is this barbarity. But when it comes to the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, again, let's remember that she's a politician, and she must not push and direct how we tell stories. Yeah, we are happy with what she's saying as pro-Palestinians, solidarity movement members and journalists who are pro-Palestinian, but at the end of the day, she is a politician. And we have to report guided by that reality, that she is a politician. And one of the things that journalists do all the time is never believe a politician. Nor do we follow and cover politicians' statements verbatim. There must always be an element of skepticism when we do such stories. And that's why I'm saying we need, again, to be guided by journalism and journalistic principles as we continue covering the stories of Palestine, because we're going to be doing two things a favor. One, we'll be doing journalism a favor in terms of making sure that after the dust settles, we're still firm and we can protect and defend our position as journalists during this period. But at the same time, we were able to tell the story as it's supposed to be told.
Well, certainly, and also I think when you look at the Minister of International Relations, we know that she had made a call to Hamas, and she says that she called the Hamas leaders to discuss getting humanitarian aid into Gaza. But yes, she was actually slammed for this phone call to Hamas, and it was seen differently. And we know what her position is. She has previously called for Israel to be designated an apartheid state, and her position is very, very clear. But again, her intention in calling Hamas, talking about humanitarian aid, again, construed very, very differently. And this is where you look at world media, you look at mainstream media, taking, getting mileage out of this and making political capital.
Yeah, I mean, again, my point is very clear. I'm not tasked with protecting and spinning for the Minister of International Relations Corporation. And the views about what she says, which I agree entirely with most, will certainly be interpreted differently by different journalists who have different understanding of what she's saying and who have a different understanding of what the current war on Gaza is all about, etc. And as journalists at this point in time, we need to accept that there will be those views. Some of the views are sponsored by Israel, and some of the views are sponsored by pro-Palestinian groupings. But we need to take a position of continue doing what we do best, which is reporting on the story at the moment. And again, I think we tend to, and I understand that, I mean, we're all pro and we're all Muslims. Whatever rhetoric that resonates with us will be amplified. It's okay. It has to be. But accept at the same time that there will be others who will see it differently. There will be others, for example, who will criticize the minister that she might be compromising the seat of South Africa when the dust settles in that very, very important negotiating table by being overtly the way she is, which, again, let me emphasize, I support and I'm part of it. but there should be that element of looking at the future and how this thing is going to unravel as the dust settles, etc. So, as analysts and as journalists, continue telling the truth, continue maintaining the line that was maintained, but at the same time, let us accept that some of our colleagues will have a different interpretation and they'll look at this in a different way. So the best we do is countering that by emphasizing and insisting on our coverage, which is truthful, highlighting and amplifying the barbarity of Israelis in Gaza. And that, of course, will resonate with the people, and it's likely to amplify and be much more effective than the rest that are trying to spin the evil that we currently see. I mean, the highest form of human evil in terms of, you wonder if these people are not looking at these pictures of daily occurrence of killing of the Palestinians and women and children, etc. But we have to stick to the cause, and we have to stick to the principles as in terms of telling the story.
Well, Ibrahim, Jazakallah khairan for that. And as always, for engaging with us here at Salam Media. And we do appreciate you taking time out. Have yourself a great Jummah, inshallah. And we wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Ibrahim Thembisa Fakude with us this morning, and with it, we're going to go for a break. When we come back, we're going to play out an interview I had conducted last night. Now, this was fascinating. Matt Gilbert is a Norwegian physician, a humanitarian, an activist, a politician, also a professor of emergency medicine at the University of Tromsø. Now, he's got a broad range of experience in not only in humanitarian work, but he's been actively involved with solidarity work regarding the Palestinians. He has volunteered at the Al Shifa Hospital in Gaza. So he's got a lot of experience, particularly at a time like this, at a time of crisis. He's been there before. He's attended to victims of Israeli aggression. He's been teaching at the medical universities in Gaza as well. And what we will do after this is play out perhaps about 10 minutes of this interview with Dr. Matt Gilbert as he unpacks from his experience and also what is happening on the ground right now.